Welcome back to another exciting trip around the crypto canaverse. Today, we will be learning about the transformative power of the human-first approach. This session dives into the reasons why industry's leading financial planners are prioritizing emotional intelligence and how it can revolutionize your firm's strategies amidst the ongoing 16 trillion generational wealth transfer. Grasping the significance of behavioral finance strategies in this economic evolution is essential, and it's something that all advisors should be learning. But before we dive in, we're going to have Alan present our Bible verse today.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to some of you. Thank you so much for joining another week of Crypto Canaverse Show. Today's Bible verse actually comes from Proverbs 15:22. Remember, Proverbs is the book of wisdom. And it highlights the importance of seeking guidance. And the verse says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. It really ties into our show because we have some amazing advisors on our show today. So highlights the importance of seeking guidance and multiple perspectives before making decisions. The verse suggests that when one acts solely on their own judgment without consulting others, there's a higher chance of failure. However, when they seek advice from many advisors who can offer different viewpoints and wisdom, their plans are more likely to succeed. This proverb emphasizes the value of collective wisdom and the benefits of collaboration. It encourages humility and the recognition that no one person has all the answers. By involving others in decision-making, one can gain insight that lead to better outcome and avoid potential pitfalls. In a broader sense, this verse can be applied to various aspects of life, including personal decisions, business strategies, and community planning. It serves as a reminder that wisdom often comes from the counsel of many rather than the isolated plans of an individual. I'd like to open up to our guest today to see if there's any inputs or something that resonates or insight from this verse, because I know in my career was building a wealth team around my clients made not only my job a lot easier, it just brings a lot more advisors and expertise, therefore helping the clients to make an educated decision and a wise decision in their financial plan. Is there any insights out there people want to share?
No, I think that's great.
I think we could just we could conclude the show, right, Rory?
And that's our show. And
that's it.
No, I agree, Alan. I'm big, obviously, on collaboration. And, I think, what I have been advocating is for advisors out there, it's okay not to have all the answers. But I think it's important that we start asking the right questions and really diving deeper into what matters most for our clients. And then we can guide them to the path of where they want to go and optimize their well-being. So I think that, as you're right, a team of advisors really helping them improve their well-being is great. But we need to really ask them what they really want out of life and what matters most.
I also like this idea of kind of eliminating the self-reliance. Like, we need to rely on it's like this concept of like it takes a village, right? Just like it does to raise kids, it does the same thing to raise a business, to raise a successful community. It takes so many different people and all of their strengths and talents, different energies, all of those things to really make something super successful. So I really like that idea, and really getting away from this DIY mentality of, no, really, you want to surround yourself with this group of people. They will help you go further, faster. They're going to help you succeed in ways that you can't even imagine, because they come with a completely different set of experiences, skills, and perspectives.
I think you make a great point, Susan. And I think a lot of us, kind of very independently minded. I think we can do it all ourselves. And I think it's sometimes we look at as almost a badge of honor to be able to do everything ourselves, right? And very independent thinking and depending on our backgrounds and that. And, I recognized not early enough that I needed help and working with others to really be more intentional about their plans and their goals. It's part of the work that I do with my clients and to help them really tap into what really is meaningful for them. I think Rory tapped into that in terms of what is your purpose and what do you really want to accomplish at the end of your career, whatever it might be. So I think that's a very, very good points all across the board.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so very much. Alan, that was a wonderful Bible verse. Thank you for presenting that. Today's announcements. The Crypto Canaverse is putting together an international pitch contest for females building their own projects in the blockchain related companies. Our first sponsor is BlockSafe. Thank you, Mr. Clayton Cruz, which has agreed to give our winner a $20,000 development grant. If you would like to sponsor our women founders, please reach out to Crystal Wampler or Alan Lau on LinkedIn or at info@cryptocanaverse.com. I am excited to welcome our guest co-host, Susan Bryant, CPA, CTP, founder and CEO of the Unboxed Advisors, 2021 Top 50 Women in Accounting, 2022 Enterprising Women of the Year honoree. And Susan, you're going to have to help me out with this. The 2023, what is GS10KSB?
Yeah, well, thanks, Crystal, for having me. So the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, it's really cool for any of the business owners out there who want to learn kind of all the different aspects of your business and how to get it going, become part of an incredible network. The GS10KSB community is really awesome. Great program. Free.
That is
just
wonderful.
Go to talk to one of your local communities. Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate you being here. Can you tell our audience a little bit about where you're calling from and about the Unboxed Advisors?
Yeah, so I'm based out of Dallas, and Unboxed Advisors is sort of the, if you will, the un-CPA firm. We're really to redefine and reimagine how CPA-related services are delivered to customers in a systematic, integrated, and concierge level approach. So we can get our business owners more focused on doing what they're doing great at, selling ice to Eskimos. We know that that's how that goes. And we can really focus on helping them build value in their business, grow their wealth, working with folks like Rory, kind of all the things.
That is amazing. Rory, what are your comments? What are you guys doing together?
Well, I absolutely love what Susan is doing. We had a conversation, Susan, I don't know if you want me to go into this, but she was on my podcast almost a year and a half ago. And I saw the work she was doing at her accounting firm. And I said, hey, Susan, there's so much potential we can have in this profession to really provide the concierge level services to clients, looking at things holistically, really integrating the accounting and the wealth advisory world to provide for that many needs of the client. I call it a virtual family office. You probably all have heard this before. It's really taking the tax, accounting, estate planning, business advisory, exit planning, insurance, really those many aspects of the client's financial well-being into consideration. And Susan does a phenomenal job with her clients, quarterbacking those clients live and bringing in the subject matter experts when needed. So I think Susan in the last year and a half, it's really great to see what she's done with Unboxed Advisors, really going from that traditional CPA firm model to building the practice, of what I think of her dreams here. And she's doing a great job and she's a wonderful client. So I love singing Susan's praises.
That's amazing. Thank you. Go ahead.
It's been an interesting process to kind of go from, if you would, the short order cook mentality of being an accountant. Like, I'll have an 1120S with a side of 1040, please. I mean, that's kind of how our because they've been our services that way. It's an interesting process to sort of get them moved to something a little bit more like an expansion of their own minds to, whoa, that's possible. So it's really fascinating.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today and being our guest co-host. We're super excited about that. I love providing resources for CPAs. And so today's company highlight is none other than John Fenton, a best-selling author, coach, and award-winning speaker who loves empowering accounting, legal, and financial professionals to help amplify their leadership and achieve freedom. Welcome, John. You're on mute, buddy.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Crystal. It's great to be here with this esteemed panel of experts, and thank you for having me on board here today.
You're most welcome. Thank you for joining us. Tell us about where you're calling from and what you do.
Sure. I live in Georgia. I live near Atlanta, between Augusta, Georgia, and Atlanta, a very wonderful lake and golf community out here. What I do is I'm a retired managing partner with BDO USA, and for the last several years, I've been focusing on professional services firms, and particularly CPAs, helping them to be the best leaders they can be. Growing up myself through the profession and other life's experiences that I've had, I saw a real need to help CPAs be the best version of themselves, and really to help them amplify their leadership acumen, but also so they can have more freedom in their lives. And I do one-on-one coaching, mentoring, strategic working sessions with their teams, managing partners, the CEOs, and their partner groups, and other workshops to help them really drive results. From a human perspective, I'm talking about human first. I know we're always going to talk about that. And I really believe that philosophy around being more in touch with the human side of how we do work in the accounting profession. So that's what I'm up to.
Well, thank you for being here. I just want to say that I love the quote by yourself that says, in the end, success can be measured by the quality of relationships built. Invest in having the best relationships inside and outside your firm. Invest in your people. That is powerful. Can you tell me a little bit of how you help CPAs and financial firms, implement these words?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's self-awareness and emotional IQ, really tapping into that, understanding, we talked a little bit earlier before we got on about meeting people where they're at, whatever generation it might be that you're working with, right? Is meeting people where they're at, connecting with them. At the end of the day, I had a long career in the accounting profession, over 30 years. And I recall the people that the leaders that I worked with. Some were great leaders and some weren't so great. But the things that people will recognize or remember most about you as a leader is the relationships you built and how you treated people. It's not going to be the billable hours. It's not going to be the billings, other, great things or leadership roles that you had. It's going to be how you treated people one-on-one, your customers, your employees, in the community. And I really think now is a time where there's been much talk about this for years, but now is really a time where firms need to consider their impact on their communities as well, giving back to their communities. And I know a lot of firms are focused on that because I think we all want to be a part of something I think has a greater purpose than just our own self-interest. And so for me, it's really around identifying that, talking about that, bringing awareness to that, and then building it into your culture, building it into your lexicon, into the things you say. Frequency and repetition are so important about how you communicate these things to build into your culture. And it really goes to my view, it really goes to a center of purpose and vision for your firm. What do you want your firm to be known for? Why do you go to work every day? Why do the people on your firm go to work there? Why do your customers hire your firm? And if you get a real clear sense around that purpose, I think you can have a really successful firm throughout the rest of the 21st century and beyond. And I think a lot of firms really want to leave a great legacy.
John, I have a question.
Susan.
Yes, Susan.
Okay, so do you think that somewhere along the way, CPAs sort of lost sight of their self, and it's like, oh, I can make money and I'll just take whatever I can get here, and it became more about making money than it was helping the client? I would be really interested in your perspective on that. And like, how is that a reflection of our profession?
Great question, Susan. I think earlier in my career, that definitely was the driving force. Is all about money, right? I'll admit I'm a baby boomer, right? We were focused on getting out of college, making some money, building wealth, that sort of thing. I think over time, as the generations, different generations come into the profession, I think first of all, we're much more sensitive to those things. I think the younger generation are more sensitive to those kinds of things about relationships and that sort of thing. Now, there are some firms where they've totally figured this out, and it's all about relationships, and they weave it into their culture and how they talk and think about things and how they do things. But sometimes we have to be reminded as well, right? It's not all about, at the end of the day, it's not all about how much money you can make. I mean, there's some firms that are definitely driven by that too, and I think it's been shifting for a number of years. I think, like many things, the pandemic forced our hand in a lot of ways about how we think about work and how we do work. So I wouldn't say the profession's all bad. It's good to make money. Look, money's important, right? Because it helps pay the bills, those sorts of things. But it's not all about the money. It's about how we build the relationships and build that lasting legacy within the firm, and encouraging and building up the people that work for us so they can take over one day, so we can all hire Rory or whatever and his firm and have a family office and retire well with great wealth accumulated and that sort of thing, right? And so it's not either or in my mind. We can still make great money. I mean, the profession right now, I think, is making probably the most money it's made in a long time, given all the market conditions that are happening. And I think so money's not a bad thing. I think it's how we relate to money and what really drives our purpose. And I think many more, I'll use the term enlightened. I think many more people are more enlightened in the profession about what is our real core purpose? Who do we serve best? Who do we want to attract to our firm? I think a lot of times throughout my career, it was kind of unspoken what the culture really was about, and we kept thinking about, I kept, and at the long time, right? And I think now we become more enlightened around that, with thought leaders like Simon Sinek and other people like that kind of shone a light on that, about what really makes us a great firm and a great culture, what we really believe in, and how can we attract more of that in our firms.
Man, could there be a better segue, Rory?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I mean, this is part of the human first and holistic approach that John's talking about. Living with purpose, and what I talk about in this human first approach is really understanding, what matters most to people. Talk about relationships. I trademarked advise ROAR, and the ROAR is not short for Rory. It's sort of a return on relationship, because as we move forward, it's not a tax advisor or business advisor or estate plan advisor. I really believe it's an advise ROAR, where we're providing for the many needs of what that client is looking for out of our service offering. So we're not really pigeonholed to a service. You may specialize in that, but we're looking at the different pain points of that client. And then, like I said, the human first approach is really a deep discovery on what matters most to us in life. I love the research by our friend Hal Hirschfield. He has a book called Your Future Self. Now, don't go buy my book, buy his book first. And he does research where he talks about, we see our future selves as no different than a stranger. And the way to change that, the antidote, is to really create a vivid visual picture of that future self, so we can identify with that person, which will enable us to make the necessary behavior changes in the here and now to make that life happen. So, I always say to people, do that exercise with yourself. That future self, where are you? Who are you with? What are you doing? And how do you feel, right? And that's real important. How are you going to feel in that? And then you'll start making the necessary choices in the here and now to make that life happen. So really, the human first approach I talk about is our relationship to money, which is formed in our childhood. Who was influential when it came to our beliefs around money? What was our first money memory, right? I have questions like, what does money smell like to you, right? Those questions, you can answer like, oh my gosh, I haven't really thought about that. I interviewed Dr. Christy Archuleta. She's head of the Financial Therapy Association. And she's Rory. We just don't think about what money means to us. We don't ask ourselves that question, because money is just a vehicle for us to hopefully optimize our life and our well-being. So if we can provide ourselves a roadmap by looking at that future self, we can then reverse engineer our decisions to make that life happen. So I can geek out on the psychology of money all day, every day. I'm big into values-based planning as well, because all the research shows that our values shape our goals shape our behaviors, and then in turn, our behaviors will then reflect our values.
Those are great points. Why do you think this is so important during this huge generational wealth transfer?
Well, once again, I think what John mentioned here is we have to meet people where they're at, right? Crystal, I think stats, and I shared it before we started recording here, is 70% of children leave their parents' advisors. So there's all this money in motion, this 80 trillion, 90 trillion in assets, the great wealth transfer is going to that younger generation. And many times they're leaving their advisors. Women, 80% of the time leave the advisor of their spouse. So once again, we got to find out, where they're at, where they want to go, meet them, and talk to them in their preferred method of communication for the younger generation. I'm a big believer in the platinum rule. So there's a golden rules: do unto others as you would want done unto you. But I think the more powerful rule is the platinum rule: is do unto others as they would want done unto themselves. So once again, it's going back to that human first approach, not having just a cookie cutter offering, right? That business owner, one may want to IPO, one may just want a lifestyle business. So we need to ask those questions of really what they want out of life. And I think meeting that younger generation, on the wealth side, I've long argued this, we don't start working with clients until they have enough assets, right? Or enough income to really start providing these behavioral tools, this human first approach. But it's the Susans of the world, those other CPAs who are on the front lines advising those small and medium-sized businesses, which are the backbone of our country, right? So if we can help them, empower them to make better choices, allow them to grow their wealth, we can then start managing their assets, doing estate planning, doing succession planning, doing an exit plan to provide for those many financial needs.
Hey, Roy, this is John. You make some good points, and talking about feeling, right? Nobody talked about feelings when I first started in the accounting profession, right? In business, right? No way. But it's around connecting with that feeling around money and that future self. Part of my work is taking my clients to that future self. Where do you see yourself in 20 or 30 years, 15 years, whatever that timeline is? I even sometimes have them write a letter to themselves, sort of like their own obituary, right?
Yeah.
Right, what they want to be remembered for. And sometimes it's hard for people to do that because we're really digging deep into things that are really our values. When somebody takes the time to really thoughtfully do that, you mentioned values, and the values are so important. They really dig into that. And it can be a little touchy for some people to actually kind of get into those feelings a little bit more. And particularly the accounting profession, we're known, look, a lot of our work is head down, get the job done, the next deadline, right? Not thinking about next year, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever, which is part of some of the work that I do with their firms around strategic visioning. And I think having that future self view is so important.
Yeah. And when I talk about too, and the approach that we use is looking at the other dimensions of well-being. So not just financial, but look at the emotional, the spiritual, the occupational, all right, the other types of what really provides us well-being in our lives. I love using therapy questions, scaling questions to address those matters. Like on a scale from 1 to 10, John, let's still go social well-being. A scale from 1 to 10, what would you say, your social well-being is right now?
Where my social well-being is at?
Yeah. Your social life.
Yeah. I think of 9, maybe.
All right. That's fantastic. Good, Yeah. So if it was
have lots of friends, we go have cocktails in the evening,
I love it. I want to hang out with you, John. Yeah. So that's a question, right? We can quantify that, but then what would that make that a 10, right? Or if you were 6 or 7, hey, what would make that an 8 or 9? So we can start providing smart goals to improve the other aspects, not just the financial, but how do we improve the other parts of John's well-being?
I think this also lends, I'd be interested to see what Brian says too, since he's sort of operating in a similar capacity to me, is when you start asking these questions, like the feedback you're getting from clients, because all of a sudden they're like, wait a second, you're an accountant. Why are you asking me this stuff? Like this doesn't sound like normal accounting talk. So I'd be curious to know, Brian, sort of what you're experiencing as you're starting to ask those questions, because I know on my end, it's been It's not that it's challenging, it's just that it is often met with I've never really thought about how you can be an important part of that overall maybe more intangible peace of mind, quality of life, how we get that on that scale of 1 to 10, how I can help you get to that 9 or 10 in the end. So Brian, I'd be curious about your thoughts.
Well, most of my clients are people that are sick and tired of paying too much tax to the state of California. It's kind of all they care about, to be honest with you. I still have $3 million annual, $5 million annual people that still want to do their own bookkeeping. So we're kind of all over the place. But that's kind of what you guys are talking about is kind of the thing that I'm trying to get into, of more of a put your whole arms around the situation, and there's more to life than making money, and there's more to life than just seeing directly what's in front of you. And it's a tough transition, I guess is the word I'm saying, to most of the people I'm talking about. We're seeing a lot more LLC, S Corp, partnership type people, which is fantastic. But those people are just so focused on getting into the black that they're really not focusing on all the other things that make the business work, and the systems and the employees and the 401ks and the health insurance for your people. So we're going to hopefully try and, again, at least know that my clients know I've offered that part of me, where I'm not just the tax guy. I'm also can be this for you, and I can also be that for you. I don't want to be your banker, but all the other stuff, I'm happy to help you out with, kind of a deal. So let's pick this back up in 1 year, and we'll see how we did.
Right. Or creditor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting, Rory. So, and maybe John has some thoughts on this too, like kind of thinking about like the intangible versus the intangible. Like, I think that's sort of like, how do you like bank account go up is a lot than having my social
your
well-being.
your emotional bank account. And that's where the human first approach comes in. Yeah, don't get me wrong, Susan, Brian, everybody else, people want tax savings. This is the shot in the arm that you can give them that is an immediate value add. I'm just asking those out there, because I found it rewarding in my practice, is let's just have that human conversation. Like you're sitting around in the backyard, or around a campfire. What do you want out of life? And I can help you get there, because I can do tax saving strategies, because I, do investment management, because I can help your family have security or peace of mind knowing that there's an estate plan put in place. So it's really just taking that human approach, just talking as a friend or, a colleague, to really understand what they want out of life. And then I believe we can help advise their businesses and where they want to go in their personal life to make that life possible.
Yeah, Rory, great comments, and Susan, great question. I remember in my career, maybe I was a little bit ahead of the curve, maybe not, but I would sit down with the controller, CFO, or the senior exec at the company, and we'd just spend, I'm kind of off the clock really, but just talking about what's going on in their lives, building that relationship. So getting to know them, right? And I think too now, I mean, Brian and others that are in the profession right now, Susan, certainly there's a push and a need. Clients will gladly pay your firms for helping them solve their biggest problems, right? That really takes us away the traditional, hourly rate. Really, it takes it into a value, gives you opportunity to take it into a value-based billing and providing that real value to them. Well, how are you going to know that? You got to spend time with them. You got to understand what's going on and not just focus on the compliance. And there's such a movement, we know, in the industry moving towards really being a trusted advisor, like really walking that talk, right? And it's hard, because the compliance part of the business has been a legacy business for many, many years. Many of us in the profession grew up in that, right? And so obviously now you have a situation where you have less people come in the profession. You have technological advances. Pandemic kind of opened the gate, if you will, Pandora's box, if you will, about how we can work and where we can work and all these kinds of things. And so embracing more technology to allow us to be more trusted advisors, pushing that down more to the younger people so they can take on these projects and opportunities to research, take on projects that may be a little over their head, but that's what they're going to learn. I'll never forget. I will never forget. Well, I was a young pup. I was like 2 years in the profession, 2.5 years. And I was leading us. It was a small audit for a small company. And the CFO came to me and asked a question about lease versus buy. Okay. For some company vehicles. I'm like, okay. Like I got excited because I could actually figure out, kind of work with him a little bit and give him some advice on that. That's where the juice is really, I think, in this profession is providing answers and solutions to problems that clients have, really being engaged that way. And I think so, to the question about, yeah, we want to help them take care of the compliance stuff. You got to do that, right? But let's add the value. Let's provide the value add, build that relationship. Your clients will gladly pay you for those services.
Yeah, I want to circle back to Susan because I want to ask you. You went from having thousands of clients there at your firm, and you've now shifted to your own practice on Bucks Advisors, more that concierge model. I know you and I love Ron Baker. I know Ron Baker's an advisor for you. He talks about advising people from womb to tomb. And he says that being that trusted advisor is really table stakes nowadays. It's being that transformational advisor and helping someone set up that 529 plan, helping them when that estate planning or that exit plan, making those appointments or those meetings with that client something they look forward to. So you're not just saving them time, but it's time well spent and time well invested. I always use my improv. It was transformational for me. I had a fear of public speaking. I hated going on stage, right? I did improv, and it's probably the best bang for my buck I've ever had in my life. And I looked forward going to that class because it helped me transform from who I was before I did it into that person I was afterwards. And I think that's where we sit in a privileged position as advisors to help people transform their lives through money management, through wealth building, through transforming their businesses. So maybe if you can really touch on that, Susan, I think I want to have you highlight, the difference in that model between having all those clients, those compliance services, it's really that more that concierge type of service.
Well, I think the person who is going to be offering the service and doing the advice, that's a mindset issue from the get-go of who it is you want to be and how you feel you can offer the greatest value to your clients. So I think it starts with us and just saying, I'm going to design something differently, function differently, and it's okay if I'm not all things to all people.
Right.
And being all right with that. And that's just something you're just going to have to be okay with. So I would say that's the starting point. I think the second thing that I would say about kind of moving into that capacity where you're serving as more of an advisor is you got to stay curious. And, Ron's podcast partner, Ed Plus, I love how he says, let curiosity lead the way. And that is paramount. Just keep asking questions. You ask more and more and more questions and don't stop, because you're challenging the business owner in a very positive way. And you're also learning at the same time how you can best assist them. So it's a little bit of both of those things. And then the third thing I would say is your network is so valuable to these business owners because they are so busy. They need you to help them to show up to the estate planning meeting and go meet with the financial advisor and help them manage the communications, because that siloed approach, it is so harmful to them in the end. And they really need someone who's like the leader, the quarterback,
sees everything,
champion, everything. Somebody's got a role. Sometimes Rory is going to be your firm. Sometimes it's a banker. So, but somebody's got to be that person, client. And so don't underestimate the importance of that net worth and those really deep relationships you have with other professionals, because that's where magic really starts to happen. When you can bring those people together and you become a unicorn team for that client. It's just like mind blowing.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is a good segue to share the presentation I have here, because you brought up two good points, Susan, and I call it, there's another book that I absolutely love. It's called, let me just see. Let me just bring up my screen here. The advice, it's called The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanger. And he talks about, we all have this inner advice monster. So it's it comes up when we want to basically, do you guys all see that?
Mhm.
Do you see that all? Okay, great. So the human first approach and the advised ROAR methodology that I developed, the return on relationship, really is doing this human first approach and deepening that client relationship. So what does that mean, Rory? That really is doing the deep discovery that Susan just talked about. And it's really a difference in approaches. And so I would say the historical approach is the expertise approach. I am the answer person. I have all the answers. I have the credentials next to my name. I'm going to solve your problems. And so I believe really the more effective approach is the consultative approach. So it's asking those questions, understanding where your client's at, and then tailoring those solutions. So like I said, I love the work of Michael Bungay Singer, and he has this advice monster. And we all do it just in general conversations with friends or family. We want to butt in and either tell it because we want to show our value, we want to save them because we want to rescue them, or we want to control it. So it's a control issue. So those are really the advice monster aspects. And I think the more transformative approach is to get curious, like what Susan, you like that monster? What Susan said, get curious, dig deeper, and loop back. We use AWE, which is and what else. So AWE is the acronym for and what else. There's also an approach that I learned from the Financial Therapy Association called WAIT. So if you remember, WAIT is why am I talking? Like, why am I talking? So that's just an approach that we do, is like, if we can just do more deep discovery, get curious, and what else? Like, why are they doing it? And that's just, it's so much more rewarding because people, they come to you first with a situational problem, but there's always, stuff under the surface that we can uncover. And that leads to just such a more fruitful relationship there, because you're really able to solve their real pain points. So I'm just a big believer in getting curious and asking more questions.
Rory, I completely agree with you. And because most of the time, what somebody thinks is the problem, once you start asking enough questions, you're like,
That's not the problem.
That's like that is not the problem. Like the symptom of it, like it's like a systemic issue, like way back there. Like,
Right.
what if you fix that, then everything changes. And like, they don't even know all the other problems. Like, just like there's one that just really feels that way. I really like that. That digging deep thing is like super key. Absolutely essential. Like, you got just to keep going, right? Even if it feels like you're sort of being a little awkward.
Hey, Rory, I have a question. Is there a certain number of questions, is there kind of a litmus test or kind of a certain number of questions to keep digging? Like, how far do you dig? Like, how many questions?
So they start crying, John. I'm kidding. And what else? And what else? Why?
Right.
Why? And they're on a couch just sobbing their eyes out on Zoom.
So it's a gut feel, right? Based on the situation.
Yeah, it's a gut feel. Like people, obviously it's a trust factor. So in the book, I talk about Vanguard's 20-year study called Advisor Alpha, where they show the value of an advisor can be upwards of 3% net returns. Really, it's coaching people from preventing them from making bad decisions. But there's also another study they did talking about the components of trust. And they showed that there was functional trust, ethical trust, where functional trust, I'm going to do what I'm saying to do. Ethical trust is your ethical. And the other one was emotional trust. And emotional trust had 53%. Ethical trust was, I believe, 17%, and the other functional trust was like 20%. So it shows you really what clients are looking for is that emotional connection, guiding them through, asking those questions, and then letting them come to the conclusion on their own. There's positive psychology out there that really talks about helping people with current challenges by looking back at their past successes, right? And really using their strengths on how they can overcome the challenges in the here and now. So like I said, I'm a big believer in digging deeper, deeper, building that trust. People, once they divulge information, we're like therapists many times, right?
Yeah.
They trust us with, intimate knowledge of their finances. We sit in a privileged position to do so. So we should dive as deep as we can with them so they can help them uncover really what matters most to them.
I really agree with
that leads me to a question. So we are going to all be working with what is in this wealth generation transfer. How do we create an environment where we we are showing our own vulnerability so that we can receive that vulnerability back. And there is that emotional trust. I'd be really curious because I mean, this is going to be different. And we do have advisors of all different ages who are going to be having these interactions. So how do we address that, or how do we address it? How can we improve ourselves?
Oh, right. Vulnerability is huge, right? If you can talk about your own faults, your own mishaps, right? I mean, that, I think that's very effective in, telling your story. Hey, look, during tax season, I had a bunch of clients who, showed up late with all their forms. And it really, I had to take a mental break, right? Because that was an issue. So, being honest and open and vulnerable, people want that. People are looking for that in today's day and age, right? They don't want that perfect advisor who knows everything. Show some vulnerability, and I think it's really effective in working with clients.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, trust is huge, right? And how do you build trust? It's really, I mean, I remember from my own experience, it's getting shoulder to shoulder with your client and solving a problem, right? Or being there with them, being in the trenches, if you will. And and I think vulnerability, part of my training and part of the work that I do is helping leaders allow themselves to be more vulnerable, because it does open up the conversation within the context of their own leadership role inside their firms, but also how they're working with their clients and how they're communicating with their clients. As you said, building trust, emotional trust, and let's face it, we are all emotional beings, right? We're all spiritual beings, have a human physical experience, but we're also emotional beings as well. And so being able to resonate and connect on an emotional level, whether it's spoken or not, but it's really a feeling, right? It's really getting into that feeling about, hey, this person I can really rely on to help me solve these issues and help guide me.
Susan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with what both of you said. I do think that we have to show up as people.
Yeah.
Like real.
Humans. Yeah.
We gotta be real first, and they have to view us that way to it's like we have to. I think there's a lot of times in which advisors feel like they need to elevate themselves in some way, to show up in a certain way for a client, that in order for them to be respected and for them to trust their advice, they have to be a certain way.
Yeah, they have to show their knowledge. The tell it thing, what I showed in the Advice Monster. Yeah.
I think that's quite the opposite of what clients or business owners especially really want. I mean, they want to be able to ask. I mean, I can't tell the number of times it's like, well, I would go to estate plan. Like I'd like to get my estate plan done, but I feel like I'm going to look stupid when I ask a question about this. And I'm like, okay, you tell me all the questions you want to ask, and I'll ask the questions.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to worry about that. Just tell me what your concerns are, and I will make sure that I ask those questions, and we get your where it doesn't feel like a threat to you. Right.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that is there a secret, I think, for getting people to talk to you like that? I don't know.
Probably time, right? Yeah. Yeah. Personally time. And I'm going to say, because I've been critiqued on this, is setting up that environment properly. And I have Bloomberg on in the back of my screen, and that can be intimidating for people who don't know investments, right? Or may not know what a SEP IRA is, or a 401k. So setting up that environment to make sure that you're welcoming. I was speaking to another behavioral finance person, and we talked about we had a pause appreciation zone. Like, it's okay to pause before you speak. It takes time to digest, especially complex information.
Mm-hmm.
So being okay with that uncomfortable silence. Like, that's uncomfortable right there. That was 5 seconds uncomfortable. I've gone 10 seconds before, right? But being okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always talk about, there's a no dumb question policy in my meetings. Like, you can ask me the dumbest questions, right? I don't know about, construction, right? I can tell you, give me a hammer and a nail. I'm a dummy there. So there's no dumb questions. And I open that up, from the get-go with people. You can ask me anything. And I think when people feel comfortable, they'll start understanding, hey, I just don't know what a will is, right? Or, what is life insurance? Like, okay, great. Let's start with a basis. And that's where I think if we can do more educational content, that's why I love the power of social media. I'm going to start doing more TikTok and Instagram videos, talking about just the generic, retirement tips or stuff like that. So my audience, people who are following on social media, can understand that, because, the layman, the financial literacy, the layman don't maybe understand a lot of the terms that we talk about, the acronyms and ETF or stuff like that. So I think it's really providing educational content to give them that basis to help them understand.
I totally agree. And I think professionals need to expand their understanding of what other advisors are working on so that they can help them work better with their clients. If I know, Rory, maybe what some things are that you might be asking about or thinking about, because our relationship we've spent time with each other, and maybe I've broadened my own horizons, then when I have informed that client in such a way that it is a seamless transition. And now I've teed all of that up and teed it up in a positive way that for the client makes it feel like this is not threatening. This is very positive. Wow, this is a great experience. And that's really matters. So we as advisors have to get better about expanding our knowledge about what these other advisors are doing. And that means spending time with them. Those relationships matter just as much.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rory, and Susan, to kind of tie a couple of things together that I'm hearing, we talked about, Rory, you mentioned the pause, right? How uncomfortable the pause can be, right? And asking those deep dive questions, keep asking, and what else, right? But the big thing I think is really important here is let silence do the heavy lifting. Just listen, right? Don't be the teller. Just listen. And that's one of the things I've had to train myself, because I could talk all day long, but it's to listen to what really our clients are saying, kind of read between the lines, right? Sort of listen to the music sometimes, what's not being said, right? Which is tapping into at the emotional level, really. And I think that's so important as an advisor to really hone that skill.
I agree.
Me too.
Okay,
so I'm curious now.
This was a pause.
Notice I took a long pause.
People are just signing off. They're like, we don't hear anything. This is just like people just looking at a camera and nobody's speaking.
I guess it's okay. Now, I will tell you that, my parents are boomers, right? So you start asking them about anything related to this, and there is like the wall goes straight up. It is like, so sorry, we don't talk about those things.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a question of like, how do we erode some of the things that are maybe generational, so that, is that bringing the kids who are like,
frame
Dad,
it with what matters most to them. Going back to the values approach. If they value family, frame it in that family setting. If you want to set up the next generations for success, we need to have these conversations. So framing it in that family aspect will allow you to open up those conversations and have them answer those questions that they may not want to ask if you didn't frame it like that.
So Rory, maybe you could talk about like, what are the key things where you're like, these are the kind of the key areas? Is it family? Is it healthcare? Is it what things where you're like, wow, all the people that I talk to, there's like some overarching themes, and like, okay, I don't want to mess this up.
Right. Yeah, healthcare is one of the biggest expenses in retirement. One of the contributors to the book too, she's got a cool platform for advisors out there. You may want to check it out if you're an advisor. It's called Caribou Wealth, and she helps with the healthcare planning. It's a really cool platform. So once again, it's going back to that deep discovery. What is, the biggest pain point that you can help solve for that client? And then people don't like to talk about death. But I believe that estate planning, I call it a family office level of care, because you can connect generations. There's other great solutions out there, tech-enabled solutions that allow you to do that. You can work together with estate planning attorneys, but that allows us to really look at the assets, look at the liabilities, connect the generations. I say exit planning and estate planning are great tools to really work backwards from, to help clients really get out everything on the table and then help them make tough decisions when it comes to, end of life wishes, healthcare directives. But those conversations, those difficult conversations, hard for CPAs, hard for advisors, right? They should be had. And it's just, how do we approach that? I think when we frame it in the sense that we're helping out our family, because you don't want them, when you pass, to have to deal with probate, right? Nobody wants to have to go through that. So you're really setting up your family for, for an easier, streamlined process once you do pass.
Yeah,
I love that comment.
I think another area that which we've experienced ourselves in our own family is long-term care, right? And so many more of us have been affected. We probably know somebody even younger these days that have dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever it might be. And is the family positioned to provide the best long-term care, whether we take them in their homes or they're in assisted living, whatever the answer might be. We don't want to think about that and talk about that. So that's really important, I think, to weave into this.
Agreed. And then also misaligned expectations. What happens when, the baby boomers think, oh, well, we're not going to give the millennials this, or, junior this, and junior thinks he's inheriting the whole thing. And his sister's only getting, maybe 5% or whatnot. How do you work that in? Is that also framing, framing in the exit planning, the estate planning, getting those expectations aligned?
Yeah, I think the best thing we can do is have money conversations on as early as possible. And we just, all the research shows that, we'd rather talk about sex than we would money. So the earlier we can start and have those conversations, or, around the dinner table, right, the better off we can be. So obviously there's some difficult conversations that need to be had when it comes to, these families, especially with a generational wealth transfer. When you're looking at estate planning, the exemption, right? If we're talking about that large sums of money, it's probably good to have a team of advisors in there working together to help that family make institutional decisions when it comes to, their estate.
I would have to comment and agree with everyone those comments, because oftentimes when I was advising, clients would have trust that's outdated, that they have created probably a long time ago. They probably accumulated more assets over the time period, or their assets have actually grown over time, and it's bumping against the estate tax exemption limits. So I think having a trust review with your professionals and your advisors is always something I would always advise, just to make sure that it's still aligned with your overall longer term goals. And having, your power of attorneys, your medical directives, your POAs, long-term care is actually one of the costs that's been skyrocketing over time as well too. So all those things needs to be buttoned up and tightened up, and having a review with the professionals and advisors. I would have to agree with everyone what they just said.
Roy, were you unmuting yourself for a reason?
No. Oh, sorry. I'll go back.
No. Thank you guys so much. Do we have any other last comments, questions that anybody has for the panelists?
I'll say this. I was speaking to Alan Whitman, former CEO of Baker Tilly, this morning, actually. And he talked about, how we need to change in the accounting profession, the way we do business, the hourly billing, right? He talks about how, it's uncomfortable out there for many CPAs and tax professionals to change, what they've been doing, the same as last year mentality. Business has been good. Private equity is now in the arena here. Accountants maybe went from not maybe the most attractive person in the room to now the most attractive person in the room, who are highly sought after. But I think for us to really catapult ourselves into the future here, we need to have, I think, a human first approach and really understanding what matters most to us. Alan even admitted to me, he goes, Rory, I don't know at age 40 if I really did the introspection, this life planning approach onto where I wanted to go. I don't know if I maybe would have become CEO. He's like, I went from, associate to partner to managing partner to then CEO of Baker Tilly. And he says, I don't know if I would have done that. I may have, but he's like, but nobody asked me those questions. So I think it's again, not having all the answers, but asking those right questions to really what matters and what we want out of life. And then we can optimize, our choices then to make that life happen.
Yeah. And don't forget to ask ourselves that stuff along the way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The honest self-assessment. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
really.
It starts with you. Yeah.
It starts with you and then who you want to serve. Because like, as John talked about in the beginning, it's what is your personal core values? What's your personal mission? You design your business around that. The business is a vehicle to achieve that for yourself. And in doing so, you actually have such a greater impact on your clients because it is so closely aligned with what is like almost like a passion project for you. But it's just the alignment is so great. It can't be successful. You can't help because it's just good of you. So
yeah, I agree. I think the wealth will follow if you're really clear on your purpose and we're in your vision for yourself and your firm. I think the wealth will follow that.
yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Let's start with Roy. Roy, where can our audience reach you at?
Well, I'm always on LinkedIn, so you can always message me on LinkedIn. You can ask for friend request me on Instagram. I'm going to start doing more Instagram videos. Rory S. Henry. I have some TikTok material too. So I think it's Rory S. Henry on TikTok. And then I have my book coming out here, which John and Susan are a part of. They contributed. I have 24 plus contributors from the accounting world, wealth management, technology, behavioral finance, which have contributed to the book. So I'm excited about that. You can go and sign up for that at adviseroar.com, advisror.com.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Susan, where can our audience members reach you at?
Like Rory, you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can email me, susan@unboxadvisors.com. I'm Rory, I'm not yet on the TikTok. But maybe
Or are you
well,
going to
there
ever
might be
be
not any
on
TikTok in here. There might not be a TikTok here in the near future. So
right,
That's right.
exactly. Maybe that's a good. I haven't spent any time on that yet. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then John, where can our
Absolutely.
audience members find you?
Great. John at johnjfenton.com is my direct email. Go to my website. You can actually, I have a great tool for helping you. Rory mentioned difficult conversations. I have a great tool for helping leaders and people watching to deal with difficult conversations. I call it my engagement accelerator. John at johnjfenton.com/engage. Free download.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We appreciate each and every one of you. Alan, can you please wrap up in prayer?
Okay, thank you so much for everyone for joining. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Dear Father, thank you so much for having another week of Crypto Controversial where we can bring on entrepreneurs and their companies to educate us, and inspire us, and help each other grow. Thank you for Roy being our guest speaker today, Susan as a co-host, and John as our company highlight. It is in your grace and your mercy and your will that you put us together to learn from each other. Today's verse clearly states that surround our clients with advisors that they can make good decisions. And everyone has a different strength and everyone has a different talent. I mean, we collaborate together to help our clients succeed financially. So just pray for the weekend that you be with us. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Crystal, you're muted.
it's a pause appreciation zone.
Pause. Thank you, Alan. I said amen. Roy, would you mind giving me back the host?
Oh, I'm stealing. We're going to do this live session. You guys watch me work all day here.
We're stuck on live.
It's a reality show, Rory.
Right? Yeah. I'm working on one of those, John.
That's right, you are. I know you are.
How do I give host back? Let me see.
You can click on the three dots on my profile, or
Oh,
you
that's
can go
right.
down to the stop video. Pop up.
Make host. All right. You got it back here, Crystal. I'm relinquishing duties.
You're relinquishing duties. Well, thank you. Thank you for not bogarting it here. And all right, live.